Gavin Rourke and his wife Myra had always prided themselves on their sense of community and hospitality. Their home in Willow Creek Estates was not just a place to live. It was a hub for family gatherings, celebrations, and short-term visits by out-of-town relatives and close friends. They had carefully renovated the house, adding a guest room and a small suite specifically for hosting visitors. Life seemed perfect until the day the HOA sent a letter claiming that their property rights were being violated. The letter was curt, legalistic, and intimidating. The Rourkes were allegedly breaching HOA rules by allowing family members and friends to stay temporarily and by renting out the property, occasionally through short-term rental platforms. According to the HOA, these actions were inconsistent with community standards and could lead to fines or further enforcement measures. Gavin read the notice multiple times, his anger slowly rising. Myra was equally shocked, pacing the living room while Talia, their daughter, looked on confused. The family had followed all official rental procedures in the county, and had never disrupted the neighborhood. Yet the HOA seemed determined to assert authority over what was rightfully theirs. Determined to resist, Gavin began documenting every interaction, carefully recording dates, letters, and board notices. He also reached out to neighbors, learning that several other homeowners had quietly faced similar restrictions but had complied out of fear. That realization strengthened Gavin's resolve. This wasn't just a minor dispute. It was a systemic attempt to restrict personal freedoms. He drafted a formal response, citing legal property rights, county ordinances, and HOA governing documents, challenging the board's overreach. Myra helped by organizing a binder with all supporting evidence, including tax documents, rental agreements, and photographic proof of family visits. The Rourkes knew that the HOA would push back, but they were determined not to let fear dictate how they lived. That evening, they gathered the family in the living room to discuss a strategy, a plan to stand up against the overreaching rules while maintaining civility and legality. Talia listened intently as her parents explained the importance of standing for one's rights. It was not just a fight over property. It was a lesson in courage and principle, setting the tone for the battle that was about to unfold. The following days were marked by tense negotiations and growing frustration. Gavin submitted his formal response to the HOA board, requesting clarification on the alleged violations and citing county law affirming his rights to host family members and conduct short-term rentals on his property. The HOA responded with a generic notice, reiterating that all temporary rentals and visits must conform strictly to their undefined community standards. This vague language gave the board unchecked discretion, creating a chilling effect on residents who dared host guests. Gavin realized that the problem wasn't just with the letter he received. It was the arbitrary power the board wielded, unchecked and unchallenged. Determined to set a precedent, he organized a meeting with several affected homeowners to discuss collective action. Myra contacted families who had previously faced fines or warnings, uncovering stories of intimidation, late-night letters, and subtle threats. The network of concerned residents grew rapidly, united by a shared understanding that the HOA was attempting to curtail their freedoms. Meanwhile, the Rourkes continued hosting a small family gathering, cautiously following documented procedures to avoid giving the HOA a pretext to escalate. Yet, the mere presence of relatives triggered surveillance visits from Officer Brant Keller, who appeared unannounced to inspect the property. Gavin and Myra documented these visits meticulously, recording dates, times, and behaviors, noting that these inspections had no legal basis and were intended to intimidate. With each encounter, their determination solidified. The Rourkes were not going to allow an overreaching authority to dictate how they lived. As word spread among neighbors, more homeowners expressed support, offering advice, testimony, and shared experiences. It became clear that the community would need to challenge the HOA's policies openly, possibly even through legal channels, to protect property rights for all residents. Despite the growing tension, Gavin and Myra remained focused on maintaining composure, knowing that emotional reactions could undermine their legal and ethical position. The stage was set for a confrontation that would test their resilience, legal knowledge, and the support of their community, all while preserving the sanctity of their home and family gatherings. The situation escalated when the Rourkes received another formal notice, this time threatening fines if any family or guests stayed beyond a certain number of nights per month. The letter was alarming in tone, suggesting enforcement actions, including penalties, citations, or even legal proceedings. Gavin and Myra were furious, recognizing that the board had no statutory authority to impose such limits beyond what county law permitted. They reviewed every clause in the HOA covenants, uncovering vague phrasing that the board had been interpreting arbitrarily. Determined not to be intimidated, they began reaching out to an attorney specializing in HOA disputes, preparing for potential legal action. Meanwhile, neighbors began to voice solidarity, sharing stories of previous fines and warnings for hosting relatives, and expressing frustration at the HOA's overreach. The Rourkes decided to call a community meeting, inviting residents to discuss the board's actions and consider collective steps. During the meeting, Gavin presented his case with clarity and documentation, explaining both the legal standing and the ethical issues involved. Myra highlighted the emotional toll on families, emphasizing how the board's policies disrupted relationships and undermined trust within the neighborhood. Residents were shocked at the breadth of the restrictions and the intimidation tactics, many expressing anger that they had been complicit or silent. Officer Keller's repeated inspections were also brought up, revealing a pattern of harassment intended to enforce arbitrary rules. The community began drafting a petition demanding that the board revise its policies, ensure transparency, and respect residents' rights. The petition included signatures from a majority of households, showing a united front. Gavin and Myra's careful preparation, coupled with community engagement, placed significant pressure on the board, signaling that the homeowners would not comply silently. As family gatherings continued, each visit was now an act of resilience, demonstrating that the Rourkes and their neighbors were committed to defending their rights, no matter the intimidation. As the petition circulated, the Rourkes noticed a significant shift in neighborhood sentiment. Homeowners who had previously remained quiet began expressing support, sharing experiences of arbitrary fines and warnings for hosting relatives or friends. The Rourkes hosted a small gathering to organize a united approach, ensuring that all documentation, letters, emails, fines, and photographs, was meticulously collected. Gavin and Myra created a binder with evidence, categorizing incidents by date, type of restriction, and affected families. They also engaged legal counsel to draft a formal complaint to the board, requesting a public explanation and policy revision. The HOA, sensing growing resistance, attempted to intimidate by sending additional letters threatening fines and legal action. But these efforts only strengthened the resolve of the Rourkes and their neighbors. Officer Brant Keller made routine visits, scrutinizing homes with family gatherings, but each time, homeowners maintained records and refused to comply with unlawful directives. The tension between the HOA and residents reached a critical point, culminating in a community meeting at the local clubhouse. Gavin and Myra presented their compiled evidence, articulating clearly how the HOA's actions violated residents' rights and undermined the sense of community. Neighbors spoke passionately, describing emotional distress caused by the board's arbitrary rules and enforcement tactics. Even families who had previously avoided confrontation joined the discussion, signaling a united front. President Soline Maris attempted to respond, offering vague reassurances, but the board's credibility had been severely undermined. The meeting concluded with an agreement among residents to pursue legal clarification and ensure transparent, fair policies, emphasizing that homeowners would continue hosting family and friends despite the board's threats. The Rourkes felt a sense of empowerment, knowing they had mobilized a collective effort to protect not only their property but also the rights of every family in Willow Creek Estates. In the days following the meeting, the Rourkes and their neighbors meticulously prepared for legal engagement. They gathered signed affidavits from affected families, compiled HOA communications, and obtained a clear summary of county property laws affirming residents' rights to host guests in short-term rentals. Gavin worked closely with the attorney to draft a comprehensive report detailing repeated violations and arbitrary enforcement, which would be submitted as formal evidence. Mira coordinated with other families, ensuring the documentation was thorough and credible. The HOA board, realizing that legal action was imminent, attempted to soften their stance with emails claiming intent to review policies and encouraging residents to follow proper procedures. However, these gestures were viewed skeptically as they lacked concrete changes or timelines. Despite the tension, the Rourkes continued hosting family members, documenting each visit to show compliance with county law and responsible behavior. Each interaction with the board or security officers was meticulously logged, highlighting attempts to intimidate and restrict lawful activity. The community began to feel a renewed sense of agency as families recognized that their rights were not negotiable. Homeowners shared advice on how to respond to HOA notices, reinforcing a culture of preparedness and legal awareness. Talia, observing the dedication of her parents, understood the importance of standing up for what is right. The neighborhood, once passive, transformed into a network of vigilant residents committed to resisting arbitrary restrictions while maintaining harmony and respect for each other. This period of organization and documentation laid the foundation for a formal challenge to the HOA, establishing a strong, united front that would ensure fairness and transparency. The formal challenge was submitted, and the Rourkes prepared for the board's response. The HOA, under mounting pressure, reluctantly acknowledged receipt of the legal documents, but attempted to downplay the significance, emphasizing intent to review without promising concrete action. Gavin and Myra remained unwavering, attending each board meeting, asking pointed questions, and presenting evidence that clearly demonstrated the board's overreach. Officer Keller, aware that his actions were now under scrutiny, behaved cautiously, avoiding overt intimidation but continuing subtle surveillance of family gatherings. The community, emboldened by the Rourkes' leadership, attended meetings in larger numbers, speaking out against restrictive policies and highlighting the positive impact of responsible hosting on neighborhood cohesion. Legal advisors provided guidance on how to document and present evidence, ensuring that each interaction strengthened the homeowner's position. Slowly, the board's authority was challenged, and the collective effort of residents shifted the balance of power. Families realized that their rights were protected under law, and the HOA could not impose arbitrary restrictions. Gavin and Myra's persistence not only protected their family, but also empowered the entire community to act confidently, fostering a culture of accountability and transparency within Willow Creek Estates. Finally, after months of persistent advocacy, legal preparation, and community organizing, the HOA board conceded to revisions of restrictive policies. Formal guidelines were introduced, clarifying that homeowners retained full rights to host family, friends, and lawful short-term rentals, provided they followed reasonable notification procedures. Officer Keller was reassigned, and a new oversight mechanism was implemented to prevent abuse of authority. Gavin and Myra felt a profound sense of relief and accomplishment. Their steadfast commitment had protected their property rights and restored harmony within the neighborhood. Talia could once again enjoy family gatherings and visit friends without fear of confrontation. The community celebrated this victory, recognizing the power of collective action and documentation in challenging overreach. Willow Creek Estates, once a place of quiet intimidation, had transformed into a neighborhood defined by transparency, mutual respect, and empowerment. Gavin reflected on the struggle, understanding that vigilance, knowledge, and unity were essential in safeguarding rights and ensuring that families could live freely, host loved ones, and maintain a sense of security in their homes. The Rourke story became a guiding example, reminding residents that standing up to unfair restrictions not only protects one family, but strengthens the community as a whole.